Bayhackle Sports presents The Delano Little Show.
Welcome to the Delano Little Show on BayhackleSports.com. We have a very exceptional guest. I'm just going to say exceptional guest joining us today. We're talking about the president of Quail Hollow Club, Johnny Harris. It is so nice to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Delano. It's wonderful to be with you.
Yeah, and I know it's a busy time for you. I know you've got a lot of things going on with the President's Cup.
We do.
And the President's Cup, would you say the biggest thing we've ever had here in Charlotte?
I think, having been involved with the Final Four in 1994 and with the playoff games here with football and then having some of the games here with the Hornets, all of that's been big. But this is clearly the largest set stage for an event we've ever had.
What can people that have never been to a President's Cup, maybe they've been to a tournament at Quail Hollow Club for the Wells Fargo Championship, which is so well done, by the way, if I can say so. But what can they expect with the President's Cup? Is it way different than what they would see at the Wells Fargo?
Well, I think it starts with the competition. The players play each other, or they play in singles or match play when they have 2 and 2, and in some cases they alternate shots. Other cases they play best ball of the foursome, so 2 against 2, and then at the end they play man against man. So the last day on Sunday there are 12 matches and all of them will count. So and you can follow the scores, the excitement, the competition, and then the scale of the hospitality and the setup of the golf course is very different. We normally play where our last 3 holes, 16, 17, and 18, are called the Green Mile because they're the hardest holes on the tour, hardest 3 holes. Those 3 holes, in order to make sure they're in the matches, we've decided the route to go from the 8th hole to our 12th hole and make that number 10, and then that makes our last 3 holes 13, 14, and 15.
So that kind of guarantees the competition is coming.
It's about 80% of the matches end on 16 or before.
Difference between the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup. I know there are certain differences, but as far as the atmosphere and everything else.
Pretty much the atmosphere is going to be a lot of the same thing. It is, instead of playing against Europe, you're playing against the rest of the world besides Europe. So we have players from over. We have 250 countries that will be tuning in on television to look at Charlotte. We have over 1 billion TV sets will tune in to look at the President's Cup here in Charlotte in the Carolinas.
You mentioned the international team, basically. Some say they've been hurt by the new golf league.
I think everybody knows that there are a couple of the players that would have been on the international team have gone to the LIV Tour, and we lost a couple of Americans. So it worked out actually where it's probably 2 players on each side are not going to be here, and that's unfortunate. But that's the state of the game right now, and you have to watch that, and we certainly hope they get that worked out and straighten it all out so that we continue to see the game do what it's done over the last 50 years.
Is LIV Golf going to kill the PGA?
No, not at all. It's if you go back and you look at the organizations that support the game and have grown the game worldwide, and that would be the PGA of America, the PGA Tour, and then you go from there to the United States Golf Association, the Royal and Ancient, and then you got the Masters or Augusta National. And so those institutions have always supported the game and supported the competition that the game represents, more so than the money. And you get your reputation and you put your stamp on history by how you play in those events versus how much money you get paid to play.
So the state of golf is actually, according to you, pretty good shape.
Well, I think it's wonderful what Jay Monahan, the head of the tour, did recently, where they made some modifications to the tour that'll be more attractive to some of the great players, and I think they'll continue to stay and be part of the tour.
All right. We're going to talk a little bit more about your life, if we will. Are you up to that? Are you good?
I'll talk about anything you ask me. I may not be able to answer it. And if you ask me about my life, there are probably going to be some things I can't remember, But.
Well, to set it up, I mean, you talk about the Masters and the golf before we get into a little bit deeper. You probably have the reputation of belonging to more clubs than big name clubs than anybody.
Well, I wouldn't. I don't comment on that, but I do have a tendency when I'm asked, I'm like a bad cold. You ask me, I'll show up, and so I've been very fortunate enough to have a lot of friends who believe in the game and who use the game as an opportunity to grow friends, and that's what we've done. And I do have a lot of friends all over the world because of the game.
Yeah, now, outside of Quail Hollow Club, because as you say, that's probably your number one place. Are there any others that if you did a list of top 3 that you're a member of?
I wouldn't ever do that.
Yes.
I'm reminded of when I was a young man in high school and you'd go to the prom and there'd be 5 or 6 girls there that you wanted to dance with, every one of them. That's sort of the way I feel about the golf clubs. But I have been fortunate enough to be a member of a number of clubs.
And did you grow up playing golf? I mean, from the beginning?
No.
Really?
No, I was a terrible baseball player. And I played Little League baseball, pitcher, and I tried to play Pony League. And I could throw the ball hard. I just had no idea where it was going. That seems to have translated into golf. But so I tried to play baseball, but in the end, I played sports all through high school and none of it golf, and then played lacrosse at Chapel Hill and loved lacrosse. Wanted to play football, but was not good enough. So.
If you're looking at the game of golf now, before we move on, where does it stack up with other major league sports, so to speak? As far as
it continues to find its strength in the individuals that play the game. If you go back and you think about the history of the game, really in the world, you think about Bobby Jones and what he did with the game, and then you think about, along comes, Arnold, and then Jack, and then Gary, and then Tiger, and now you've got Rory, and so and if you look at that, there are other names, and I've left some people out. I have so many friends in the game, but and that are great people, but wouldn't be the kind that set the stage. Arnold set the stage for a real change in the '60s when he started winning at Augusta. And he won the Open Championship, which is the British Open, for those of you listening. British Open, all of a sudden television picked up on Arnold Palmer's persona, and he became, one of the premier sports personalities in the world. And then you couple with that with the competition between he and Jack, and then he and Jack and Gary, and you watch all that go through, and Tom Watson came along, and you have a lot of great players that did a lot of great things. Then all of a sudden, Tiger showed up. And Tiger became sort of the Arnold Palmer of the tour then and took the tour a whole nother step up. And now there was this thought process, and I remember at our 50th anniversary for Quail Hollow, we had Arnold here, and one of the guys asked him while he was speaking, was he worried about Tiger taking over the tour and just controlling the tour? And he said, well, last week, I watched the beginning of something very special. I watched a 19-year-old kid from Hollywood, Ireland, come in here and win his first PGA Tour event here at Quail Hollow. And I can tell you, Rory McIlroy, Arnold said, is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And of course, that's what's happened. And Rory has the kind of personality Arnold has. I mean, there are very few people that don't get along with Rory. Right. I mean, he's a wonderful guy, and he's continuing on to keep building the game and growing the game.
A quick story, when he won the Wells Fargo Championship, we had a little office survey, if you will, where you could pick the winners of and I drew Rory McIlroy. And I was standing on the 18th hole, because I used to come out there all the time to cover it, the tournament, and I was walking, and nobody knew Rory's name back then. Nobody knew who he was. And I realized that when he was walking up the 18th and everybody was going crazy, I realized he just won me $200 because I forgot that I had him in the pool. So I yelled at him. I said, hey, Rory, you just won me some money. And he turned around, he looked at me and said, yeah, that's the way to go.
That's
so
good.
He's just got that personality, too, that's very...
Well, that's before we legalized gambling.
What did you just say? I said it was a play office survey.
That's right.
No, but his personality has just been great to see. Yeah. And I guess that's what you're talking about the personalities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And he's a wonderful kid.
Tiger Woods versus Jack Nicklaus. Is that just ad nauseum as far as that's concerned?
No.
Will you ever
There's no way that you'll never know, but the fact of the matter, and there's no way to know whether either of them could have beat Bobby Jones in his prime, because Bobby quit when he was 28 years old. I mean, he never played again to speak of competitively after he's 28 years old.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about your friendship with Arnold Palmer. We're going to take a break here and then come back. The Delano Little Show on BayHackleSports.com. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Delano Little Show on BayHackleSports.com. We're talking to the president of Quail Hollow Club, Johnny Harris. We've been talking about a lot of different issues with golf. Now, a little bit more of your personal life. Once again, you grew up here in Charlotte.
Yes,
correct? Sir. And were you popular? Were you like a popular in school in element? I mean, were you a big deal?
Well, I grew up and I went to Charlotte Country Day School, and all I wanted in life was to play football for Gus Purcell at Myers Park. And unfortunately, I went off to school and went to a school in Virginia, Orange, Virginia, and had a great experience there and loved it. And then, of course, went to Chapel Hill. No, but I think the whole, it's funny, I used to tell people I grew up on a farm because it was the largest dairy farm in North Carolina when I was a little boy.
Right.
And my grandfather passed away.
And your dad kind of took the lead as far as developing Quail Hollow Club, correct?
Yes, he did. That's right.
How did that all come about?
Well, it's interesting. He was, because of all the land that was associated with the farm, he always had in the back of his mind, why don't we build another golf course? If, none of his friends liked to wait and hated starting times. And most of them were members of the Charlotte Country Club, and they had to call in on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. You had to get on the phone and try to get a starting time for Friday and Saturday and Sunday, whatever the days were. So they decided to build a golf course. And in 1958, when Arnold Palmer won the Masters, he actually turned his card over to my father at a scoring table, and they became friends and all that. And so Dad asked him to come talk to the 25 men who were going to be the charter members of Quail Hollow. In 59, and he had a great visit with everyone. And I remember being told afterwards, after everyone left, Arnold was sitting in the library with my dad, and they were talking about everything. And he was laughing because one of the men in the room had said, "Can we build a good enough golf course for there to be a golf tournament for the professionals to come here and play?" And he said, "Well, if you put up enough money, they'll play down Independence Boulevard." But, that was the old money thought process. But you go back, Arnold always said if we'd build a golf course, he'd try to help us get a tournament. And that's what happened. And the Kemper Open came here. And then we had the senior, Payne Weber seniors and all of that,
right,
which at one point was the was the WBTV seniors for 1 year, which was way back.
Yes, I didn't know that.
And then we went into which was initially called the Wachovia Championship, and it became the Wells Fargo Championship, which we have now. And so all through that, Arnold continued to be close to Quail Hollow and to us and to me personally. I had the great good fortune to travel with him all the time and go all over the world to play golf, and went to China to open the first golf course in China with him, and went to New Zealand and went all different places, to Africa, Sun City, opened Sun City, Gary Player Country Club.
Wow.
And it was fun. And I always found myself in the room talking to the people that were supporting the game. And finally one day, I was up in Rochester, New York for a Ryder Cup, and I was sitting at a table with Herb Kohler, who unfortunately just passed away, up at Whistling Straits, and Tommy Cousins from Atlanta, and a guy named M.G. Oringer, who was head of the PGA of America at that time. And everybody was working for an event, a big event.
Right.
And we were just doing regular events. And so MG said, "Why don't you try to get the PGA Championship?" Everybody else was trying to do something, why not? So I did. We started working on it, and because of our membership, and it's a real sacrifice by our members to lose the club for 2 weeks for the President's Cup or some of these things, and then we have to overseed and all of that because we have golf tournaments in May, and the golf course needs to be prepared for that. But it's been a big support mechanism to everything we've done because the members believe in having the best players in the world come to Quail Hollow and come to Charlotte and to the Carolinas.
It's a big deal. I mean,
Yeah, it's
no
a
doubt
big
about
deal.
that.
It's really-
President's Cup. Let's circle back to that because you told me a story off camera, and I want you to share with the folks out there watching. How did you get the President's Cup?
Well, it was really interesting. I mean, one morning, the phone rang, and actually my son, who had just moved back from New York, was standing in the office with me when the phone rang, and it was Tim Fincham. And,
PGA president.
The PGA Tour president.
PGA Tour president.
They're two different organizations. Yes. So anyway, I spoke to him, and he said to me, I need a favor. We were within 1 year of the Wells Fargo, but he wanted to move the tournament, and he wanted to move it from in front of the Players Championship to behind the Players Championship.
Right.
And that was one of those things that Arnold had always told me, you're never going to get as many good players after as you will get before.
Right.
And so I said, well, I'll go to the board, I'll talk to the board, but I feel like we can probably do that. And then, because of my business career, I did what I always do. I say, well, if I do that, what are you going to do for us here at Quail? And, I wasn't cognizant of what I should have been, which is I didn't know what to ask for. And then he said, well, what do you want? And I started thinking, my mind was racing, and then I remembered Arnold and Jack in the first President's Cup and how wonderful it had been. And I said, we'd love to have a match play event at Quail Hollow. What about the President's Cup? And he said, let me think about it. And the next day the phone rang, and there he was. And, he said, I'm going to send Jay Monahan, who'd just gone to work for the tour at the time, who is now the chairman. He said, I'm going to send him up there, and let's see if we can't work out the President's Cup.
Wow.
And that was in 2015.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you. We're excited.
Got that.
And, we look forward to making a lot of great things happen during the next week and a half.
Let's circle back one time real quick, Mr. Harris.
Yeah. Please call me Johnny. You sound like a highway patrolman. Go ahead.
Let's go back to Arnold Palmer and what he's meant to you in your life. Yep. I mean, because you can tell there was, just through all the stories,
sure.
he's kind of person was he like, and when did you first meet him? Did you first meet him when you were very young?
Yeah,
age?
the first time I ever met him was that night at our house when they were talking about building Quail Hollow.
Did you have any idea at that age who he was?
Oh, I knew who he was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. Oh, no. Because I was a sports nut. I mean,
right.
I had every Sports Illustrated that came out. The day it came out, I would read it cover to cover. All of that. I was a sports nut.
Wow. Okay.
So I knew that, but I think the thing that I didn't understand was that because he ended up buying a car dealership here, and then he came here, and Smokey Bissell, my brother-in-law, and I were developing some land around Quail Hollow, and we actually built a house for Arnold on the golf course, and he used it for a long, long time, and he just was a special man, and I had the great good fortune to really, when I say travel all over the world, I went all over the world with him, and he was such a special person, and he always, as long as he could hear, he was the most personable human being I'd ever met. He could talk to people. He never looked over your shoulder like he was looking for somebody more important. And I'm always reminded that we were trying to figure out how to get him to start wearing hearing aid, and he didn't want to wear hearing aid. He thought that was, and we finally said, Arnold, you keep walking by kids that are asking for your autograph, and you're not turning around, and they're getting hurt, and they start crying. And that's why Arnold started wearing hearing aids.
Wow.
Because of that. I mean, he was that kind of person. And he, the last time he was in Charlotte, I got him to come up and play in the Wells Fargo in a Pro-Am with me and his grandson. And so Sam Saunders. And so it was really interesting. We played and we got all through, and he was getting in the car to go back to the airport, and one of his daughters had flown up. Amy had flown up with him, and so they were getting ready to get in the car to go back, and he grabbed me, and like he always used to do, he would put his arms behind my neck, and he'd put his face right in front of your face. And that's when you knew that this was going to be something he didn't want you to ever forget.
Wow.
And he said, just remember, your mom and dad would be very pleased about what's happened here at Quail Hollow. Don't you ever think anything but positive thoughts about how they look at this. And he said, but I want you to remember that, success and greatness are always under construction. Don't ever stop making this place better. Oh. And that's just, but he was like a second father to me. He was like a second father.
Truly a special person.
And he would call you up and tell you that if he thought you did something wrong, he would tell you, I don't think you did the right thing.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes,
we appreciate
sir.
that.
Absolutely.
We got to talk a little bit more, maybe some favorite moments from the Wells Fargo Championship, maybe a couple of different things. You got so many stories to tell. I feel like I want to get them all in.
I think I have lots of favorite stories, and I have the things you don't hear about, the personal things.
You hold on to that right there.
All right.
We're going to take a break here.
Okay, good.
And we're going to come right back with Johnny Harris. A Delano Little Show with BayAppleSports.com. We'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back to the Delano Little Show on BayAppleSports.com. We've got the president of Quail Hollow Club, Johnny Harris, with us today. And we were talking about moments that you've experienced at the Wells Fargo Championship, and you were getting ready to go into what you were going to say, and I hate to cut you off, but...
Well, I think it's through sports. I remember growing up here, and the first time I ever went to a public building, it was to the Billy Graham Crusade out on Independence Boulevard. And that was the first time that I ever was where I ran into and understood integrated bathrooms, because Billy would not appear anywhere where they didn't treat everybody the same. And all I could think about was public buildings and how that was the place everybody could come together. And so I watched, and I used to go to the Queen City Classic, was when my dad used to take me to that game that was played on Thanksgiving between West Charlotte and Second Ward. And that was two black high schools, because it was the most fun game you could ever imagine going to see.
Right.
And all of a sudden I thought, sports seems to be a mechanism to bring society, particularly here in the South, together. And I watched that over the years, and then the maturation of golf and being around Arnold, and then developing friendship with different athletes at North Carolina, and becoming very close with Mac Brown, and learning what coaches do and how they deal with student athletes and all of that. But I also, along the way, was exposed to wonderful stories and wonderful events that just made everything kind of unusual. I was at, there's so many that it comes around, I have to recall them. But when speaking of Arnold, the two quick stories on Arnold. One, he was at the U.S. Open, which he eventually should have won but lost out at Olympic in San Francisco. And he was standing on a tee, and a little boy was standing next to the tee, and he was crying his eyes out. And he went over to the little boy and said, if you'll stop crying, I'll solve your problem. And the little boy said, well, I've lost my mother and father, and he couldn't stop crying. He said, I promise you I'll solve that problem. Let me hit the golf ball. So he said, okay, and the little boy got quiet. Arnold hit the golf ball perfectly. And then he went over and he said, now give me your hand. And he and the little boy walked down the middle of the fairway. And about 100 yards after leaving the tee, this voice hollered, Roger, Roger. And it was this little boy, Roger, mother and father. Of course, it turned out that was Roger Maltby, who turned out to be a great PGA player and an announcer. And those are the kind of, nobody asked Arnold to do that. He did that on his own. I think the other wonderful stories about sports, Mac Brown won the national championship out in Los Angeles when they beat USC when he was at University of Texas. And in the locker room afterward, he spoke to the kids. You can still get this on YouTube. And he told the kids that night, don't let this be the most important day of your life. Don't let winning the national championship be the most important thing you do. Some of you are going to be doctors, some of you are going to be lawyers, firemen, policemen, everything. Don't let this day be the most important day of your life. And, those are the kinds of things that people can share through sports and people listen. And as we look at what's going on today, sports continues to bring us more together than almost anything.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention what you've done in the community with the different people and the Charlotte Sports Foundation, a little bit of everybody working together. What has that meant to Charlotte, all the different people that have worked with you along the way?
And they're going to think this was a setup, but it's not. I'm sitting here thinking about over Labor Day weekend, we had a situation where the University of North Carolina played Florida A&M Rattlers, and in Chapel Hill, we had North Carolina Central and North Carolina A&T play a kickoff game here. And then on Sunday afternoon and Monday, Quail Hollow hosted 6 historically black universities. And I truly, that didn't used to happen in the South, and it certainly didn't happen here. And all of a sudden, sports was doing that, and different sports. We've got the Jumpman Classic coming in December with Michael bringing all the different schools that support his brand.
Yes, we had Fred Whitfield on the show before. He talks about it all. Yeah. He's big with that. Yes.
Well, he should be, because that's a wonderful, wonderful event for Charlotte.
Yes. Where do you see Charlotte going in as far as the events? Is that just a sign of what's to come?
Yeah, I think it's something. There were a number of people that said, well, during the President's Cup, we've got a pro football game on Sunday of the President's Cup. Well, we also have a college game at Chapel Hill on Saturday where they're playing Notre Dame in a marketplace that's grown the way the Carolinas have. You just can't imagine the kind of things that the sports has done for our community and for Charlotte and the region.
You look back on your life and all that you've done to this point. Any regrets at all? Are you full board?
I regret being old. Yeah, I mean, but honestly, I think that I almost regret the times when we lose somebody along the way and I didn't have a chance to say thank you. We just lost Herb Kohler up at Whistling Straits. Herb was a wonderful man. He was in the toilet business, plumbing business, and Herb was a great supporter of the game. And, it all comes back to the integrity that the people who support the game have integrity. And I think it's the kind of thing where values are important, and the values that you find in the game of golf and associated with it are so important. But I wish I'd been able to say goodbye to him. I wish I'd been able to say goodbye to Arnold one last time. I wish, there are so many people. My dad, Lord, I mean, I wouldn't, clearly, obviously I wouldn't be here without my dad, but the values that he imparted to me and the conscious decision to leave it better than you found it, and that we as a family had we felt obligation to help make this city something special. And I really go back, way back. I mean, I remember during the Civil Rights Movement and Fred Alexander and he and John Belk, and as a young 15 or 16-year-old, listening to the two of them talk about how important it was to keep things safe in this community, and watching that. And at Harvey, there are so many different people that are part of this community that you just forget. And as we were laughing, Harvey Gantt. Yes. Well, excuse me, I should have said it.
No, former mayor.
And former mayor, and tried to make him sit. We did everything we could to get him elected to Senate, but we couldn't.
Right.
But I don't want to.
Well, this is always important. This was I know what you're saying.
I think about you moving here when you were 23 years old, and that's a long time ago, because I remember you being involved with high school sports. I think the whole program is that business was an integral part of this community, and the leadership the business community gave to this community was magnificent. But then you think about the decision that we had with George Shinn, with Bruton and racing. I mean, nobody understands how valuable racing has been to this community.
Yes.
And then, of course, the football with Jerry and now David and those people and just watching it all happen.
It's just amazing to see
Amazing
the growth
what's
of
happened.
what's happened. And you've been a big part of it. And we appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you, sir.
Very
Great
much.
to be with you.
Thank you for spending time
Thank
with
you,
us.
sir. Always.
That's all the time we have for the Delano Little Show on BayHackleSports.com. We hope to see you next time.